Torah Or, Parshas Vayetzei, Peish Chof Aleph. Okay, the pasuk says, "V'shavti b'sholma b'savi." Yaakov Avinu is making this condition with Hashem. If Hashem gives him everything and make him good and so on, so then "V'shavti b'sholma b'savi," and he'll make me return peacefully to my father's house. V'aya Hashem li'lelokim, then Hashem will be my God. V'evan is shesamti matzeva, and this evan that I made as this matzeva, yia beis elokim, will be a home of Hashem. So it says, "V'tzorch lahavin," we need to understand a shaykhet shalo evan im shem avaya. The pasuk says that this evan will be a beis elokim. So that means an evan is connected to Hashem. Because the pasuk says, "Shavaya yil elokim," then the evan azais will be beis elokim. So Yaakov Avinu is saying that this evan will be, if Havaya will be Elokim, so then the Evan will be a Beis Elokim. V'gam tzarich lahavin, we need to understand, Evan Avzeis Loshin Nekeva, there's a grammatical problem here. The pasuk says, oh, Evan Avzeis, Zeis in Hebrew is feminine. So it should have been Tihi Ya Beis Elokim. Instead it says Yihi Ya Beis Elokim, which is masculine. So in two words, one's masculine, one's feminine. Okay, so he says like this. So we need basically to understand this matzeva that Yaakov Avinu is building with the Evan and all that. What does it all mean? So he says, Lahavin is called now to understand all of this. We need to understand what it says before. Yaakov Avinu met the place. He took from the stones of the place. He put it around his head. Like Rashi says, simply to protect him from the wild animals. And he made it as a monument. So he says, we need to understand, there seems to be a whole issue here with stones. He took stones at a place, and then the stone, what is this inyan of a stone that Yaakov Avinu is talking about? And also, first he talked me'avnei hamokim plural, and then it says Yaakov also evan achas, and then Yaakov made him into one stone. Or as Rashi says, Yaakov Avinu took the stones to put around his head. So all the stones started fighting. Each one wanted Yaakov Avinu's head on it. So Hashem made it into one. Or as Rabbi says here, Yaakov made him into one. Okay. So what is all this?
Is this the Evan Shasir?
What?
Is this the Evan Shasir?
No. Achine Reisha Pasha Ksiv at the beginning it says, Vayetzei Yaakov Be'Beersheva Vayelo Chorana. Yaakov went out of Beersheva where Yitzchak Avinu lived, and he went to Chorana, to Choran. What is Yaakov? Yaakov B'chinas Yud Akev. Yaakov is Yud Akev, which is Hamshacha Chachmila, which is the bringing down of Chachma, which is Yud Lamata Mata, all the way down, the Bechinas of Kvayim, even to the level of heels. Yaakov is Yud Akev. Yud is the level of Chachma. Like really many times, just a dot, a spark. Akev means the heels. So what's the level of Yaakov Avinu? What's his Avedah? Bringing down the level of Chachma all the way down, even into the level of heels, to the lowest of lowest levels. That's what it says. Yaakov Avinu left Beersheva Yelacharano Shebchinas Yaakov. What does Yaakov Avinu do? He takes Beersheva and brings Beersheva down to Choran. Mibchinas Sheva Shulamayla Mayla, which is a very lofty level. A level of Atzilus, where the Erdis and the Kelim, it's all Alukus, and he brings it down in Shtaushel Samata Mata, the Madrega Yeset Tachtena, to the lowest of lowest levels, which is the level of Choran. They will explain him to Shem later. So in other words, what's the Avodah of Yaakov Avinu? Taking the highest level of Alukus, Beersheva, which is like it's a Mashbi and Aisei Tzadik, the level of Elokus, which is all Elokus, and he's bringing it down, all the way down, into the level of Charei Nafsho Mokim, in a place of love and evil and so on. So it says, Kamesha Kos, like it says, Save Yeshua is Yaakov, he should command the salvations of Yaakov. What is Yeshua's? Imsham Shin Ayin Nahirin Elohim. There's 300, it says there's 370 worlds up there, lofty levels. And Yaakov Mechabel Mamshach Eisa Lamata. Tzave means command, but Tzave also means binding. So what does Yaakov do? He takes the level of Yeshua's, the salvations of Hashem, and he brings it down into Yaakov, into the level of Akvaim, into the lowest of levels. V'gam Yeshua's besides salvation, it means milosh and shah, for an expression of turning, like it says, Vayish Hashem al Hevel, Hashem turn to Hevel. What is the concept of turning? If you call me, I turn to you, that means, so to speak, I'm coming down to you. That means, Savi Yeshua's Yaakov, he says, which is Yeridas V'amshachas Eri Yizbarach Lamata Mata, bringing Elokus all the way down. Bottom line, what Alter Rebbe is saying here, the level of Yaakov Avinu is bringing the highest levels, Yud, Chochmah, into Arkev, take Be'er Sheva, the highest levels of Elokus, bring it down to Choron, Tzavi Yeshua's Yaakov, Yaakov Avinu's Aved is to bring the highest levels into the lowest level. Which, by the way, is interesting, because we know in Avram, Yitzchok, and Yaakov is Chesed Gvor Teferes. So Teferes is the middle, right, left, center. The middle one goes all the way from the highest, all the way down to the lowest. That's why Yaakov is Titin Emes Yaakov. What's the level of Yaakov? Yaakov is a level of going from the highest levels to the lowest levels. Because again, we learned many times, what's Emes? Aleph Mem Sof, first letter, middle letter, last letter of the Aleph base. What is the level of Emes? It goes from the beginning, through the middle, all the way down to the bottom. And that's why in the Mishkan, they had the walls where, the boards. Now how did the boards stay connected to each other? So there was a loop on top, a loop at the bottom on each board, and then there were poles at the top and at the bottom that connected the whole wall that it shouldn't fall down, right? But now the question is, how did the perpendicular walls connect? How did the perpendicular walls connect? So the pasuk says, "V'abriach hatichen, mavriach betecha kroshim min hakotza lakotza." Besides the fact, if these were the boards, so there was one ring here, one ring here. Then in the middle of the boards, there was a hole that went through the board, all the way through all the boards. And the middle briach, the middle pole, miraculously, when it came to the end of the wall, turned, connected to the next wall, and then again turned to the third wall. So the level of briach hatichen that went from one extreme to the other extreme through the middle, that's the level of Yaakov Avinu. So what's the level of Teferes? Teferes means you take the highest levels and you bring it down to the lowest levels. Like he says, Be'er Shabbat Techoran, Yud into Akev. Tzavi Yeshua's Yaakov being taken the highest to the lowest. So he says, Achishtal Shulis Ravayim. Kokal B'Tzimtzum Emrabim. In all these levels of Tzimtzumim. Achebol Gam Lamata, they came all the way down here. In the level of Choron, what happens when this level of Kedusha comes down to Choron? Then it becomes Alba de Pruta Lagamri. When Kedusha, we learned this in the other Maimar also, when Kedusha comes all the way down, then Kedusha turns into Klippa. It's so covered, it becomes evil. Like it says, Nor Yaitse Me'eden, which is the level of Chochmei Law, to water the garden, and then Mishami Porid, And then it's split into 4 levels, representing that from Kedusha, in simpler English, like this. Evil also exists from Kedusha. Everything has to exist from Hashem. So how does evil get its sustenance? And if there's Kedusha in it, why isn't it feeling the Kedusha, and why isn't it bottled to Hashem? Why is it separated from Hashem? So the answer is, because this level of Kedusha comes down, 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 to such an extent, it's so covered, it's so concealed, that you don't even know Kedusha exists there. And therefore, evil can live from that level of Kedusha. But bottom line is, that level of Kedusha now feeds evil. And therefore, what is the avodah of Yaakov Avinu? Yaakov Avinu, Olav Shalom, Yaakov Avinu wanted to elevate the stones of the world, Charon, and he wanted to elevate it to Kedusha. Meaning, he wanted to take the many stones, which represents diversity, pluralism, all that klipa stuff, and he wanted to make it into one. He wanted to make it into one, as the Latin on the coins and the dollar bills, from many into one. Yaakov Avinu wanted to accomplish that down here should be the same level of Yichud and Bittul. Just like up there in Atzilus. Elokus is one with the Or and the Kalim. Everything is one with Elokus, like we learned. Therefore, what did he do? Yaakov Avinu took the stones of the place. What do stones represent? So he says like this. Avonim nikro Asius. Avonim are called, similar to, in Sefer Yetzirah it says, it's called letters. Why? Like it says in Sefer Yetzirah, Shnei Avonim bein shtei batim, 2 stones build 2 houses. Shalish Avonim, 3 stones build 6 houses. Meaning like this. If you have Aleph Beis, 2 letters. So you can make 2 words. Aleph Beis, Beis Aleph. If you have 3 letters, Aleph Beis Gimel, then you can make 6 combinations. And keep on. So in other words, like this. How did Hashem create the world? Hashem created the world with words. Okay? Now, in words, you have like this. A number of letters create a word. Many words create a sentence. Many sentences create a paragraph. Many paragraphs create a chapter. Many chapters create a book. Okay? So you have like this in creation. And the same thing with this. Hashem created the world, so Hashem created different creations of the world, and then you have the makes one word, like it makes one creation, then many creations, and many creations. Or like you have many stones make one house, many houses make a block, many blocks make a neighborhood, many neighborhoods make a city, and many cities make a country. So the same concept of stones. So Avonim represents the tool that Hashem created the world with. Because in Sefer Yetzirah it says stones and letters are the same concept. So he says, just like from many stones you create one house that you can live in. From a lot of letters become words. That seichel comes into. And also, just like stones are inanimate, right? The lowest level. Letters themselves don't mean anything. It's only when you make a combination of letters do they become something. The same thing, letters, the Gabi HaSeichel, HaMalubish Bam, compared to the Seichel which was within them, Heim Daimon. There's a level of inanimate, Sheina Me'erkem HaSeichel Klau. Okay, so he says like this, Nimtze moving Mikol Anal, Shavanim Nikra Isis. That stones are called letters, and the same thing is Lamaila. Okay, now the Alter Rebbe is going to explain like this. The stones, plural, represents diversity of creation. Yeah, Hashem created inanimate, plant, animal, human, each one has millions of diamonds, semeach, chaim, medaber. Unbelievable. Hashem created the world with Elokim of diversity. What is the purpose of creating the world of diversity? The Avodah of the Jew, because diversity represents the lack of one Hashem. If there's a lack of one Hashem, that's diversity. What is the purpose of creation of Dira B'Tachteinim, of the low worlds, is to create a home of Hashem there, which means to show that everything in the world essentially is one thing, Hashem. This explains, by the way, a very interesting, strange Gemara. The Gemara says, they asked Rabbi Akiva, if Hashem keeps Torah, how does he make it rain? You're not allowed to water stuff on Shabbos. So if Hashem makes it rain, so Hashem's doing malach on Shabbos. If Hashem keeps Shabbos, how can he do it? So Rabbi Akiva answered him, by Hashem, everything's a private domain. So we should say Yachid. But that doesn't answer the question, because in a private domain, you also can't water the lawn. He's not answering he's not talking about carrying. Carrying would be one, yeah, that's a private domain. But he's not answering the question. So what's the explanation? The explanation is like this. The whole purpose of Torah mitzvahs is to make pluralism into one. Right? So therefore you can't do malachis on Shabbos, because malachas deal with world, which represents diversity. Therefore on Shabbos you stop creating, just like Hashem stopped creating. So on Shabbos we stop creating. So Rabbi Akiva said basically this concept doesn't exist by Hashem, because by Hashem everything's Him anyway. The whole purpose of malachis is not to create diversity, create world, concealment. By Hashem, the whole concept of malacha doesn't, that's what he answered him. By Hashem, everything's Rishus HaYachid. The whole Avodah of a Jew is to make public Rishus HaRabim into Rishus HaYachid. By Hashem, that exists already. The whole thing doesn't exist. So that's what the Rebbe is explaining. What was the Avodah of Yaakov Avinu connecting Be'er Sheva with Charan, the Yud with Akev, like he said, Tzavi Yeshua is Yaakov to take the highest levels and bring him down. The Avodah of Yaakov is to take Avnei Hamokim, to take pluralism, and make it into one stone, one Hashem. Which is the Avodah of every single Jew, by the way. To take the pluralism of the world, the diversity of the world, the lack of oneness of Hashem in the world, and show Einay Mulvadi, that Hashem Echad U'Shmei Echad, it's only Hashem, everything's only Hashem. So he says, Hinei Ksiv, B'dvar Hashem Shemayim Nasu. The heavens were made with the word of Hashem, like it says, Malchus Cha Malchus Kol Elamim. The Malchus of Hashem, your Malchus is the Malchus of all worlds, meaning, Shechai is Kol Elamis, the life of all the worlds, which are Elam Esadin Ketz, is actually infinite. Like it says, Hayesh Mizpah Lugdudav. There's a contradiction between two pasuk. The Gemara in Chagig asks a question. One pasuk says, Elef alafim v'ribur avavis Hashem Shemuni. One pasuk says, 1,000, 10,000 times 10,000, serve me. That means there's a limited amount of angels. 1,000 times 1,000, 10,000 times 10,000, whatever it is. Then another pasuk says, Ulugdudav ein mispar. How many malachim ain't this part? Infinite. So the Gemara asks the question, it's a contradiction in the pasuk. So the Gemara answers, this that it says 1,000, 10,000, that's mispar gdud echad. That's the amount of one legion, let's say. How many legions are there? There's infinite. But the bottom line is, there's an infinite amount of creations. In fact, the Rebbe asks a question in Mayim Rabim. In one of the earlier Maimon, the Rebbe was Magia, when by the Sinai War, the Rebbe said a Maimer, Mayim Rabim, and he was edited to the Maimer. Those days it was very uncommon. But over there's a order, the Rebbe asks a question, how could there be, from Chassidus that comes out, there's infinite amount of creations in the world. So the Rebbe asks, how can a finite world have within it infinite creations? Because every creation takes place. And the Rebbe asks, only Makim Ha'arin Eina Min Amida. Only the ark didn't take up any place, like we learned. But how is it possible? Then later on the Rebbe answered, whatever.